Hey, welcome back to my channel for a quick but very thorough room makeover. This week I am going to show you how I transformed this dining room space. Taking a look at what it was when I first bought the house, we had these green walls, cream chair rail down to a floor that desperately needed to be painted. I was looking for a vintage, cozy, kind of speakeasy-esque vibe in this room, and I'm going to show you how I started to achieve that. Step one was to refresh the lighting in here.
No, wait, we need that thing on it, right? The hide cover? That has to go on first, right? So that you can hide that inside.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think we got this spot for here.
Okay, so we just need this on top. It could go up there. What does it do up there?
So, put all this up there.
Yeah, there's a hole to the left. It's already rolling. Alright, there's a hole in the ceiling we have to patch. Just ignore that. It's kind of cool! You think it's weird? There's a bulb in there. You want me to switch it to a different kind of bulb?
So if you couldn't tell, that was my first time installing a new light fixture. Shout out to my dad for helping me get that secured and functional. But moving right on to the next part of the room makeover, I definitely wanted to paint the walls in there just to get it more looking like what my vision was. I applied the faux lime wash technique that I showed you in my last video that I showed on my living room walls. I did the exact same technique in my dining room. So if you want to see a more in-depth look into that process, you can watch my last video, but it involves using two very similar colors at the same time on your paintbrush. After painting the upper half of the wall, I tackled that chair rail down to the floor. I decided to make it all one color from the chair rail down to kind of give it a more cohesive look in here and also make it a little bit more dark, moody, and cozy. So I chose this sort of dusty eggplant color, I guess I would call it, to cool things down a little bit, make them a little bit darker. It's not that far off from what was on the floor originally, just has fewer red undertones in it, and the floor definitely needed some patches anyway, so it was a much needed refresh on the floor. I've actually done some floor painting before for other family members. I've tried out some different techniques, some with patterns, and I really do like the look of a painted patterned floor, but I have a lot of decor that I was planning to put in this room. I didn't want things to feel too cluttered or visually busy, so I decided to keep things all one solid color on the dining room floor. I like how it turned out, and it actually didn't take me that long. I think I got the entire floor painted in just about 2 hours, which really wasn't so bad, and it was kind of just nice to see this room looking fresh and glossy and new again. I also decided to paint this inner frame around the window to create a sort of nook moment over there. I think it helped to make the room feel even more cozy and dark with that framing around the bright windows, and I really like how that area in particular turned out. Next up was to furnish this room. So I was lucky enough to be given my childhood dining room set once my parents got a new one, very conveniently for me. And this dining room set has been in my family for a very, very long time. I believe it belonged to my dad's grandfather first. So it's very cool to have a little piece of family history in my home and get to design it for my own space. Now, the process of decorating a room is one that emerges and changes over time. I definitely think that my decor in here will evolve as I do, but I've collected a lot of cool little knickknacks and artworks that I knew I wanted to incorporate into the space, and I'm sure I'll add to them over time, but I had a few things to get myself started with. Of the artwork and the decoration that I ended up hanging in this room to start with, I think I only actually purchased one of the things. Everything else was either found, collected, or gifted, which kind of helped me create the feeling of vintage nostalgia in the room. I really liked how that turned out. So just like old frames that we had lying around in the basement, or note cards that were sent to me that I thought were pretty, those are the kinds of things that I wanted to use to furnish the space around the table. Now, if you know me, you know that I love Buffalo, New York. I love the city that I'm from. So there are a lot of little pieces of Buffalo history within this room. And if you're from the area too, maybe you will spot a few of them. Now, one thing I'm doing here is hanging up a few refurbished or found or thrifted frames that I already had, but I don't have as many frames as I do pieces of artwork. So what I'm doing in this shot here is using bulldog clips to just hang little pieces of artwork on nails on the wall. I actually really like the effect that this gives. The bulldog clips have kind of a vintage feel, being just simple and effective and made of metal, so they don't draw too much attention to themselves. Now, if I claim to want a vintage speakeasy feel in my dining room, I better have a nice little bar cart moment somewhere in the room. So that's what I'm setting up here. I added a salt rock lamp because that kind of felt like an appropriate way to light up a bar cart. I also have this nice bouquet of flowers that I assembled from the Trader Joe's fresh flower section. You can get a bundle of eucalyptus there for $4, just a pro tip. Now this wall above the buffet is incomplete. I have a DIY plan for the focal point of the gallery wall that I'm intending to put here above the buffet. So I'm just going to show you this little finished corner for now. Stay tuned for a DIY tutorial that I'm planning for what will go above this very beautiful buffet. Now, I'm not a musician by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have a few little special musical instruments that are too beautiful to just leave packed away somewhere when they're not in use. I decided to make a little music corner moment happen here on the wall surrounding the windows. Now, between the instruments, the railroad pin, to the seating, this is definitely one of my favorite tiny spaces in my entire house. One of the only finished looking spaces in my house, and definitely one that I'm just very, very fond of. And now for a task I'm weirdly fond of, setting the dining room table. Something about putting out pretty dishes and silverware and a centerpiece just brings me joy, so I'll be entertaining as much as possible to give myself an excuse to do this. Is it just me, or is there something so satisfying about a ceramic dish that has edges like this? I'm absolutely obsessed with these plates. I love using them all the time. Now, I don't know everything about properly setting a table, but I do know that the fork goes on the left and that the knife blade should face inwards. Now, colored glassware is really having a moment, but I've been a fan for a long time and have been collecting colored glassware in anticipation of someday having my own dining room to furnish. Another pro tip I learned from my father: bread plate goes on the left, drinking cup goes on the right. If you hold up your hands like this, you have a little cheat sheet with a B and a D. And finally, no table is complete without a centerpiece. I definitely wasn't anticipating the dining room being the first room to be mostly finished in my house, but it turns out that making a space your own is an extremely incremental process, and this one just happened to come together. I really enjoyed making the video to show you a little bit of my vision finally coming to life, and I'm excited to make some more videos soon. I think it's just about time for me to share with you a printmaking video. It's been too long of me having a YouTube channel and not sharing my art, so stay tuned for that. It'll be coming up next, and thank you for watching this one.